This is Kevin Conroy, and I know that This Week in Geek can't handle the goddamn Batman.
Gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe, here in this great hall of justice, are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled. The Justice League of America, the combined might and power of the Man of Steel and the Cosmic Crusader, the Winged Avenger, and the King of the Sea.
I once thought I could protect the world by myself, but I was wrong. Working together, we saved the planet. And I believe that if we stayed together as a team, we would be a force that could truly work for the ideals of peace and justice.
What? Like a bunch of super friends?
More like a Justice League.
Doctor's banner, belted by gamma rays.
Brainiac, what is it?
Look, I just want some pants. A decent pair of pants.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off. What are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
It's morphin' time! Put an ad on the front page. Cash money for a picture of Spider-Man. He doesn't want to be famous, and I'll make him infamous.
My spider senses are starting to tingle.
Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said,
It's clobbering time.
Hello, everybody. It is I, JT from Saskatoon. Welcome back to TWIG Sunday Funnies. And with me, as always, is the Arthur Curry to my Barry Allen, Mike the Birdman Dodd. Birdman, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's fantastic to be back on the show as we begin to take our TWIG winter hiatus. And
the Odin sleep, if you will.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be a break. I'm taking 3 college courses right now, so I'm just as busy, if not busier, than I ever have been. But at least I can take it at my own pace, kinda, sorta. Maybe I'll be dead by the end of late January at this rate.
Well, you know, with all the comic books I'm read, I'm pretty sure me and Alex could suss together some way to commit an act of necromancy. You know,
worth it. Definitely worth it.
Yeah. What do I need a soul for? This year has proven that I don't have one any at all. Anyway, today, folks, we're going to be talking about the other Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the Justice League. Now, just a little bit of a tale of the tape. This is one of the longest running, not consistently longest running titles like Todd McFarlane's Spawn or Eric Larson's Savage Dragon, which have pretty much never missed a month since they started in the 90s. Yes, we're talking about 90s comics on this show. What a shock. But the Justice League of America originally debuted in Brave and the Brave and the Bold, number 28, 29, and issue 30 in March of 1960. The original 5 members was... I'm just looking at the lineup here because I actually made notes, Mike. What the hell?
Ooh.
Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, and Martian Manhunter. Although the first appearance of the Justice League did not detail their origin, that came later in Justice League of America number 9, where those 5 plus Batman and Superman repelled an invasion of aliens from the planet Apalexia. And if you ever see an image of the Justice League comics where they're all turning into trees, it's from that issue. Now, over the course of DC Comics history, the Justice League, believe it or not, Mike, have had varying lengths and lineups over 20 different ongoing titles.
That seems excessive.
And a combined total... not including all one-shots, but annuals and special one-shots that would work like annuals, because I did a lot of, believe me, I've seen stuff on the fan wikis that no one should ever see. Let's see if I do my math here. That's 1,051 comics. That's not including one-shots, graphic novels. That's just basically regular issues and annuals, like I said. Now, the big seven of the Justice League have always been the original lineup. We've had a lot of other characters in there during the years. Now, would you be at all surprised if I told you that the Tasmania Devil was a member of the Justice League at one point?
Like the Looney Tunes character?
No, but they had a member called the Tasmanian Devil. He was
okay.
He was a superhero from Australia who basically turned into a human-sized Tasmanian devil. He's basically a werewolf, but he's a Tasmanian devil. Not the dumbest member of the Justice League.
I don't know. That's ranking pretty up there with rungs are pretty fucking stupid.
Well,
but,
we also had a member from Russia called Red Rocket, who basically...
Oh my God.
Yeah, so you had the Classic League, and when we get just past Crisis on Infinite Earths in the 80s and they reorganized the Justice League, it was Justice League for about 19 issues. Sorry, not 19 issues. Did I say 19 issues? I meant 6 issues. And then it got subdivided. We had the Justice League International and Justice League America. And so basically they set up like an embassy in London, and you have Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, Wally West, Power Girl, Metamorpho, the Tasmania Devil, Elongated Man and his wife, and a few other not ready for primetime superheroes are over there. And then you have the main guys over in America. And this ran off and on till about the mid-90s. We got the Justice League started doing, basically they had embassies all over the world, so they were kind of sort of part of the United Nations. And at one point, the Martian Manhunter split off from the team and had the Justice League Task Force. Now, they were a black ops sort of group who would go in and you'd do the deeds that were too dirty for the main team. Now, and I keep saying now, folks, I asked Mike because I can info dump with the best of them, and I would be talking all night long. So I asked Mike before recording to give me 4 or 5 questions. He gave me 6, which thumbs up. And he gave me some really interesting questions. You know, one of the questions you had, Mike, was have any of members of the league ever gone rogue or broke bad? Now, what made you? Yeah, but I just want to ask you, what made you think to ask that question? Because I thought that was a really interesting idea.
Well, I kind of look at the history of like superheroes and superhero teams, and usually at one point or another, there's always one guy in the ranks, be it the X-Men or the Avengers or whatever, who goes nuts or goes evil or gets mind controlled or something stupid happens. But just with the DC is one of the weak points in my comic book knowledge. I don't know a lot about DC, and I just wondered, has this ever happened? In Marvel, I can think of a number of times things have happened with like the X-Men or the Avengers or even the Fantastic Four, but I don't know if it's ever happened with the Justice League. I can think of the one storyline of the Justice League that I know. I think it's called Tower of Babel, where somebody uses Batman's files against the Justice League to take them all down. But I'm wondering, has somebody been a part of the Justice League and said, you know what, fuck you guys, I'm done with you? So I'm wondering, has that ever happened?
Actually, it's happened a few times. Now, like Mike said, folks, there was the Mark Waid written story, A Tower of Babel, in the JLA run in the mid-90s to early aughts. What I also like to call Grant Morrison's Justice League, because he wrote it for the first 40-some issues. But yeah, Talia al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul's daughter, breaks into the Batcave, finds the anti-JLA protocols, which is also something that they had in the X-Men comics, because Professor Xavier had those, but he told the X-Men about it, because how many psychics do we know that make people go mad? So yeah, Batman kind of sort of broke bad. Actually, the first time there was ever a betrayal of something like that within the league happened within the first couple of years. In the Silver Age, as we had Rick Jones to the Incredible Hulk and the Avengers, they had Snapper Carr, who is this beatnik sort of character, like, you know, just like snapping his fingers like cool daddy-o, I'm grooving. And thank God they used Snapper Carr in the Justice League cartoon, but that was just his name, and he was a news reporter. no beatnik. But Snapper was basically tricked by the Joker, who was in disguise to betray the Justice League. The Joker tried taking him out. He, of course, failed, and that's more or less how Snapper was written out of the title back in the 60s. Now, as far as actual Breaking Bad, there are three main ones of note that I want you and the listeners to know, Mike. The first one came out just prior to the Infinite Crisis event in the early aughts, where it was revealed back in the day that Dr. Light, the first version, the male Dr. Light, got onto the Justice League satellite. Everyone else was dealing with a case on Earth, and Elongated Man's wife, Sue Dibney, was there, and he raped her.
Yeah.
And when they found out, they tracked him down, and they took a vote, and Zatanna, who was a member of the League at the time, used her mystic powers to essentially lobotomize him and make him forget everything that he found out while he was on the tower. Now, this had the unintended effect of making Dr. Light a joke for many years, and he became like this joke villain who was routinely getting his ass handed to him by Robin and the Teen Titans. But what happened is, as they were doing this, Batman came onto the satellite, and this is Hal Jordan, Hawkman, Carter Hall, Zatanna, Barry Allen, and Elongated Man, and they all made the decision to mind wipe Batman. And this was a retcon by the writer at the time, Brad Metzler, that explained why Batman was such a dick unintentionally to the rest of the League for years, and it led to his paranoia increasing. He created the Brother Eye satellite, which became a huge part of, like I said, the Infinite Crisis crossover, and Max Lord's rise to power as a villain. And eventually this came out during the JLA run just prior to Infinite Crisis. The second most egregious is a character named Triumph. Now, I mentioned, you remember when I mentioned the Task Force?
Yeah.
They introduced this new superhero called Triumph that had like electromagnetic superpowers, 360-degree hypersenses. He was a guy who was lost in time, and they wrote this thing as he comes back and nobody remembers him. But in his story, he was one of the founding members of the Justice League. And in like their second case, he got caught in between in the time stream. And this had the paradoxical effect of wiping knowledge of him from history. So when he gets out of the time stream in the modern day, nobody remembers him and they all treat him like a joke. This leads to a crossover with the JSA in the Grant Morrison title, where he finds an evil version of Johnny Thunder's Thunderbolt Genie and almost takes over the world before he's defeated by the Spectre. He's frozen into a block of ice, and the Spectre almost brings a hammer down on him, and Superman's like, we got this. And he was just locked in a freezer in the Watchtower for years until it got blown up, and they kind of forgot about him. Like, literally, they end that storyline with Zoriel, who's this angel from heaven who joined the team, and Plastic Man talking about, power and corruption. And you see this guy like frozen in ice, and it's like, that's just a morbid trophy to keep. And they even put founding member of the Justice League on his case. I was like, really?
Jesus.
Yeah. Like, they're like, we can't forget our history now, even though you guys all forgot about him. Now, the most egregious Breaking Bad was in a crossover in the early aughts or miniseries storyline called Cry for Justice, where Ollie, Green Arrow, and Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, and a couple other heroes leave the Justice League, and they go on to become a more proactive, we're going to get the villains before they commit the crime, but with all the best intentions therein. Well, what happens is there is a villain from the Grant Morrison run called Prometheus. Have you ever heard of this guy before?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Prometheus is basically an anti-Batman. He's this guy, his parents were criminals, like a Bonnie and Clyde type. They're killed by police. He grows up with a hatred of authority. He goes on an evil, reflective training path that, like, similar to what Batman did. He has all this super tech he creates. He has this helmet that gives him Taskmaster's powers, like from Marvel Comics. He can record somebody, slip this disc in, and now he can fight like Richard Dragon, Kung Fu Fighter, Bronze Tiger, Batman, and Wonder Woman, because it programs his nerve endings or his nervous system to know how to fight like all them. So he's been a thorn in their side for years. He ends up bombing Star City, Green Arrow's hometown, and it leaves this scar, like the debris field looks like a 5-pointed star in the middle of town. And this also many people die, but the worst, a lot of fans' eyes, was Arsenal, like Roy Harper, his former sidekick's daughter, dies, which leads to him going off the wagon because he was a former heroin junkie. And Ollie tracks him down and puts 2 arrows through his eyes, like literally nails him to the wall. And then he goes on the run from the Justice League, and this, like, it's all bad. And like the Justice League at this point, this is only a couple years before the New 52. So at the end of it, Ollie's hiding out in this forest that grows up in the Star Scar that was grown by Swamp Thing, and he just literally becomes Robin Hood of Star City, even though his identity's been revealed and the Justice League is after him, but they can't catch him because the forest is kind of sort of magic and protects him. But that's like the biggest Breaking Bad that they ever had in the Justice League.
Wow. There is so much about DC Comics I simply do not know.
Oh, yeah. There
wow, I never would have expected them to go after Green Arrow. Holy shit.
Well, yeah, I mean, they, like I said, with Cry for Justice, it's literally like them getting tired of the revolving door of sewer. We catch them, they escape. They catch them, they escape. And it basically becomes just this thing of them trying to track down Prometheus, and then they kind of give up because he's got these bombs, and they worry more. Green Arrow or Green Lantern's like, fuck, this is more important than catching these guys. And they kind of quietly like, yeah, you guys tried, like pat in the back. And then Green Arrow's like, he essentially killed his granddaughter because Arsenal is his son. And what happened with Arsenal is for an entire other episode entirely. Now, the another interesting question you asked, Mike, was who is the Justice League answerable to? Ostensibly world governments. I mean, like I said before, in the post-crisis when they were the Justice League International, they were loose. They had some pretty firm ties to the UN until it all fell apart. And that version, those Justice Leagues were all dissolved just prior to the Grant Morrison era. But one thing I'm surprised you didn't think of, the Spectre. God's wrath, the DC spirit of vengeance, if you will. They would, I guess, be answerable to him, because I could maybe see Batman talking shit to the Spectre, but everyone else kind of kowtows to him.
The main reason I asked this particular question is I look at world politics, and let's be honest, they're not the greatest in the United States, nor are they great anywhere else in the world. Arguably, nobody likes the guy who's in power, but it should be noted that the people, usually without interference, but that's a digression, vote for those who are in power. So, as you said, the Justice League is ostensibly responsible to the U.S. government plus the United Nations, so it's a coalition of governments. So
self-governing too. I mean, because one of the things, like, and this is what I loved about your questions, Mike, is that made me think of stuff that I hadn't really considered before. Because you think about, even in, like, you've seen Justice League Unlimited, right?
Yeah, I actually owned a chunk of it on DVD, and I remember watching quite a fair bit of it and actually really, really enjoying it. Actually, quick sidebar. Mm-hmm. While I was reading the new 52 versions of the first 2 volumes, I kept putting their voices in my head as I was reading the, like, speech bubbles for some of this, although Green Lantern was Nathan Fillion, just because he is.
Well, as well he should be.
That's right. And Michael Rosenbaum was my Flash, Kevin Conroy was my Batman, and Tim Daly was Superman. And I forget who voiced Wonder Woman, but it was her. Anyway, go on.
Okay, so there was an episode in, and a sidebar to your sidebar. I love how some articles I read listed Justice League Unlimited as being a spin-off / sequel to Justice League, and other sites say it's the 3rd, 4th, and 5th seasons of the original Justice League, just rebranded. I just thought that was really, like, no one can agree on that. But in the 3rd season, they have an episode called Patriot Act, where General Eiling, who is an actual character in DC Comics, voiced by, as Kevin Conroy is to Batman, J.K. Simmons is to J. Jonah Goddamn Jameson. He takes this solution, it's from World War II, created by the Nazis, and it turns him into the General. Now, this is something that happened in the Grant Morrison run, where Eiling's dying of brain cancer, and he puts his mind into the Shaggy Man, which is this nigh unstoppable artificial life form that even the Justice League had trouble putting down. So he becomes this, and he goes off, and he's going to kick all the superheroes' asses because, after the events of the first 2 seasons Unlimited, he's really sour about all that. And he's having a conversation with Amanda Waller, again, as Kevin Conroy is the Batman, CCH Pounder is Amanda Waller. They have this conversation about how one side loses ground and the other side gains. That's a defeat. And it's made me think of, like, how does the Justice League get permission to build these like Empire State Building size satellite bases in space, or the Hall of Justices on Earth? Like, it's not like I need an entire series dedicated to this, but I would like to see at least one issue just showing how they get approved to build all these bases and stuff, and how the world governments aren't launching like every tactical nuke at them because they're worried what they're going to do.
I know I'd be pretty worried about it if I was a citizen in the DC universe, but it seems like you can't swing a cat around without someone getting superpowers. So I really wouldn't even worry about it. Yeah. And that's something for a future topic for us to talk about, the differences between a metahuman, a mutant, an enhanced human, etc., etc. We'll talk about that on a future episode, just brainstorming in the middle of this, but continue.
Oh, yeah. And in that episode, folks, expect a lot of this voice coming up, because that's going to be a nitpicky episode. Now, third question Mike had, before we get into our favorite characters and titles and runs and that, has anyone ever been up for JLA membership, applied, and been denied? Now, I'm sure that there's been dozens of issues over the years where they introduce a new lineup and there's discussions about who they're bringing in that. The only 3 that I could find of any like solid information, there was Green Arrow, who in the original Silver Age, he's caught by this random supervillain who's like trying to defeat another supervillain, and by the end of it, the Justice League is like, "Hey, I like the cut of your jib," and they induct Green Arrow to the League. From like the modern age, or like from the 80s onward, whenever they do retcon or flashback stories of him joining, it's usually Green Arrow annoying the League. Specifically with the New 52 Forward, it's the Green Arrow annoys the League into letting him join.
Which I found tremendously amusing in Volume 2 of the New 52 run. There's a great panel, and he gets on board of this plane where there's all these bad guys. He's like, "Hey guys, look, I helped." They're like, yes, you did. Now please go away. And they drop him off in the middle of nowhere, and it's just him on a highway. And he's like, "You could have at least dropped me near a bus stop."
Yeah.
And just the idea of Green Arrow walking through the Arizona desert looking for a bus stop is a treasured panel.
Oh, yeah. No, and that actually takes me back to the who do they answer to? Because in the New 52, a couple months prior to the first big crossover, Forever Evil, Green Arrow joins the Justice League of America. Now, in the New 52, it's just the Justice League with the Big Seven, where Cyborg replaced Martian Manhunter in that origin. And Green Arrow joins the Justice League of America, which has been formed by supermodel Amanda Waller, because pre DC Rebirth, they chose to make Amanda Waller basically draw her look like Halle Berry. Because comics. So it's Green Arrow, Katana, the Simon Baz, who is a Muslim man who became a new Green Lantern of Earth, Stargirl, Martian Manhunter, Hawkman, and Vibe. And they were created to be like the government's anti-Justice League in case the Justice League ever broke bad. And that eventually fell apart and were basically never spoken of again. So there's also there's Metamorpho, who they approached in the modern, I think, Metamorpho Year One, which is an early aughts miniseries. And they basically fake kidnap his girlfriend and her family. And at the end of it, he's like, nuts to you, I'm a freak and I just want to get my real face back, and walked away from them, even though he did work with them many, many years, or many, many times over the years. And the biggest one is Black Lightning. Now, they recently released the first issue of a title called The Other History of the DC Universe. Have you heard of this one at all?
No, not at all.
Okay, so in the 80s, after Crisis, they released this 2-issue series called The History of DC Universe. It's a 2-issue summation of the history of the DC Universe from the dawn of time through the Golden Age, Silver Age, and up to the events of Crisis. Just how they went from a multiverse to a single universe for many years. The Other History of DC Universe is dealing with characters that are usually never spoken of or referenced very much in history comics like that first one. So they're talking about Katana, Black Lightning, Jessica Cruz, like a Latina girl who is another. There's like 5 or 6 Green Lanterns from Earth all at once. And it's something that's like, yeah, you don't really think of these characters. And the first issue is based around Black Lightning's history. And this is something that draws on his Bronze Age appearances, that the Justice League actually contacted him in the original Black Lightning series in the 70s, where, he's already not a fan of the Justice League because you got the, all these, big white superheroes. Okay, that one guy's green, and they don't really do anything of value according to him. Like they're not dealing with drug dealers or extortionists or murderers. They're dealing with Kanjar-Ro and his Gamma Gong, or the Shaggy Man, or Starbreaker, who's like a cosmic vampire that eats suns, but they don't do anything down in the street. So when they come to him, they want to elevate him to the Justice League. He tells them to kick rocks. And he walks away from Batman after telling him to go fuck himself.
That's kind of cool. And I can actually respect that, because I really have got an appreciation for street level heroes, especially from watching the Marvel kind of Netflix series like Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and Daredevil. Like, yeah, you're taking on these murderers, extortionists. You're not the Avengers. You're not fighting Thanos. You're not fighting Ultron. You're fighting the Kingpin. You're fighting Bushmaster. And I know I'm using all Marvel references here, but that's what I like about Batman more so than Superman now. And yet I've got a Superman tattoo, but I like the idea of Batman doing stuff like that, because someone's going to have to take out these bad people. And yeah, Batman fights some pretty significant villains too.
Yeah.
But Black Lightning, he's taking care of the community.
Yeah.
I like that.
And that's cool. I mean, and also that was one of the biggest things, if you know, in Green Lantern, Green Arrow's history is, at one point they brought Green Lantern down to Earth. He was kind of in shit with the Guardians of the Universe. And this is around the time that Green Arrow's like money manager embezzled like all of his money, and he became like the Errol Flynn looking with the goofy goatee, liberal justice warrior that he has predominantly been written as for years after. And we have the Hard Traveling Heroes arc where Green Arrow and shared the Green Lantern title with Hal for a few years, where they're literally just trucking across America in this beat up pickup truck, and one of the Guardians of the Galaxy decides to come down and experience life as a mortal, and becomes this very socially conscious era of comic book writing. This is around the time we have that famous cover where my ward Speedy is a junkie, and you see Speedy strung out with the needle still in his arm after shooting up with heroin, or the famous one of two comics that didn't have approval of the Comics Code Authority. Like, there's an issue around that same time of Amazing Spider-Man where Harry Osborn, because
he's on pills or something, right?
Yeah, he's on pills, and Norman's blaming Peter for all this, and I was like, I think you should look in the mirror, asshole.
Mm-hmm.
So the fourth question you had, and this is another one I had a lot of fun thinking about, Mike, so much so that on the list I wrote down the Spectre twice. Is there anyone capable of taking down the Justice League? Now, again, we had the Justice League of America from the New 52. We have the Spectre, because God's wrath. Other things I had on this list, other DC heroes, if you got all the other heroes and some of the anti-heroes in the DC universe, I mean, it'd be a war of attrition, but I think eventually you would take them all down. I mean, Batman can't have plans for everybody. Or
yeah,
can
that's
he?
true.
The Green Lantern Corps.
Okay.
I'm sure he's got you got Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, Kyle Rayner, John Stewart, Simon Baz, and Jessica Cruz. I'm sure he's got at least 6 plans for 6 Green Lanterns, but there's Kilowog, who's kind of like this giant pink like beast man from another planet who's a Green Lantern. You got Green Lanterns who are cosmic
planets.
Well, yeah, you got Mogo, the Green Lantern planet. You got Chase Leon, who's like this geodesic like crystal with these weird like slinky looking arms, who's a Green Lantern. There's basically a sentient smallpox virus who's a Green Lantern. There's this alien insect who's like the size of a housefly. He's a Green Lantern. So the Green Lantern Corps, I think, might be the most sensible, because the Spectre's all about smiting people and turning them into human candles, which is actually what he did to Dr. Light once he got his memories back and decided to try again with Sue Dibney before she was murdered. And he literally turned him into a candle and burnt him down.
Jesus. So could the Spectre just like basically just like kind of snap his fingers and the Justice League is game over? Is the Spectre the finger of God?
He's the fist of God.
Okay, so if something ever truly got out of control in the DC universe,
and the Green Lantern
and the writers
couldn't lock it down,
handle it,
yeah, then
they'd be like, okay.
And an outside one, because it's something we'll talk about in our favorite runs, the Avengers, potentially.
Really?
I think the Avengers would have that might be more of a civil war, and they're just going to end up like laying waste to New York City. But I think the Avengers might be an option. If let's say Steel, is like, the Justice League's gone mad. Captain America, we need your help. And all of a sudden, Iron Man pushes Captain away from the mountain. He's like, what's that? Batsy finally went nuts. Hey, Reed, I called it. Because Tony would be an ass like that. But yeah, that's for the questions. Just a little trivia, if I may, Mike. Do you know how many animated series of the Justice League there have been?
Okay, so if I'm going from way back when to now, I guess the Super Friends counts.
Yeah.
So there's the Super Friends, there's Justice League Unlimited. So there's 3 series right there. I'm guessing so 3 series that definitely count.
And Justice League Action.
I forgot about that. So there's 4. I guess they show up in Brave and the Bold, but that wouldn't count because that's not an independent series.
Well, it still counts as having Justice League appearances. Like, it's not. There's a few.
Oh shit! Then that really complicates this answer. I can think of at least 5. And there was this weird DC Girls show, and I can't remember what it was called, but I kind of liked it.
Is that the one with that really poppy sounding theme song and Get Your Cape On, I think it was called?
Or something like that. I just thought the animation was neat.
That DC Heroes Meet the Bratz doll line.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know. I kind of dug it.
You're right about that. I would also, and this is, again, it's not, you can count the appearances. It's not a wholly Justice League cartoon, Brave and the Bold, but I mean, they had appearances there. There was, did you know that before the ill-fated 1997 TV pilot movie that never got picked up, there was a first quote-unquote live-action Justice League 2 specials in the 70s that you can find on YouTube and laugh your ass silly later?
I've seen clips and stills from it. I for some reason remember a fat Green Lantern sitting on a couch. And I remember thinking, how the hell did somebody approve a budget for this?
Yeah.
Like, how can executives be this out of touch? Or like, you know what? We need a Justice League sitcom. Now, arguably, that might fly today. But in 1990s world, what the fuck are you thinking?
Like, they had Guy Gardner was the Green Lantern, but they give him Kyle Rayner's mask, the Guy Gardner suit, like the weird green leather jacket, and he's not like this bowl cut asshole who's like a womanizer. He's a computer salesman / computer tech, or what's it supposed to be? I think it's Barry Allen Flash, and he can't hold down a job. And the Martian Manhunter is played by David Ogden Stiers, who we know as God, I can't remember his name. He was on MASH back in the day. He was like that very upper class sounding surgeon they had in the show.
Oh, I know the guy you mean. Yeah.
And he was Reverend Purdy on the Dead Zone TV show for the years that ran. And also, here's the weird thing. The villain in that pilot was the Weatherman, played by the late, great Miguel Ferrer. Bitches leave. And he actually went on to voice the Weather Wizard when he showed up in the Speed Demons episode of Superman the Animated Series, where it's Flash and Superman having a charity race around the world. And he had somehow, they had these tracker armbands that would allow him to track where they are so he could actually target them with lightning strikes. And I thought that was a pretty cool crossover. Now, when I was talking about the first live action Justice League in the 70s, they had these 2 specials under the Legends of the Superheroes title, which were essentially celebrity roast variety show specials, and had some of the first live action, such as they were, appearances of various DC characters. Like, it was a reunion of Adam West and Burt Ward and Frank Gorshin, who all played Batman, Robin, and the Riddler in these things. We also saw live action versions of Solomon Grundy, Captain Marvel, or Shazam. And that's a whole episode in itself talking about that lawsuit. Sinestro Flash, Giganta, Black Canary, Hawkman, the Atom. And even before that, they had the Superman Aquaman Hour of Adventure in 1967, which are basically a rotating collective of various DC animated shorts. Like, you had Aquaman, Superman, Teen Titans, the Atom, Flash, Hawkman, Green Lantern, and 3 episodes of the Justice League that don't even hit 6 minutes. It's like literally like, wow. Hey guys, let's go fight these supervillains. Well, we sure did it again, didn't we, Batman? Like, they almost
I had no idea that was even a thing. Like, holy shit. Like, I literally thought that that Super Friends was the beginning and the end of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you had the Adventures, and then the New Adventures of Superman, and you had the Adventures of Batman, the New Adventures of Batman through Filmation, and I think Hanna-Barbera before the Super Friends started. But yeah, even Marvel, they had cartoons as early as 1966. Like, you had the Marvel superheroes, which was Iron Man, Captain America, Thor,
And
the
Hulk,
Submariner, the Hulk, and then you had the classic 67 Spider-Man, the original 1967 Fantastic Four. Like they had superhero cartoon animation pretty early on like that. And then Justice League Action, and I don't know if you've ever seen the early aughts the Batman cartoon, where
I remember it, but not well.
Yeah, the art design was done by the same guys that worked on the Jackie Chan adventures, so it had that art style. The entire last season of the show, after being set up in the 2-part 4th season finale, is basically Batman's part of the Justice League now, and he teams up with Green Arrow, Green Lantern, the Flash, Hawkman, who's voiced by Robert Patrick. The T-1000 is from the planet Thanagar.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah. Oh, I've babbled. Now, one other trivia thing as we get into our favorite comics here, Mike. The literally miles-long laundry list of DC creators that have worked on the Justice League over years. You have Gardner Fox and Mike Sekowsky, who created the Justice League. Gardner Fox is a writer. He'd been creating stuff as early as the Justice Society in the 30s and 40s. Like he created, I'm looking at my notes here, he created the original Flash, Sandman, Hawkman, the Justice League or Justice Society. Then you had, ignore the sound of flipping pages. God damn, I wrote a lot. You have guys like the legendary Denny O'Neil, who is primarily known in DC for a lot of his 70s run writing, like the Green Lantern, Green Arrow comic. He reinvented Batman on the 70s. He left DC for a while, went to Marvel, came back, and he ended up being the editor for the entire roster of Bat Family titles like Batman, Robin, Nightwing, all that from 1986 to the year 2000. Like 14 years, and he was like the creative vision, or at least the guy steering the boat for Batman. You had Jerry Conway, who created Jason Todd, George Perez, enough said, the legendary Carmen Infantino, who created Barry Allen Flash, Joe Kubert, Grant Morrison, who outside of this, he created Marvel Boy in Marvel, and he's the creator of Damian Wayne, that little bastard. I'm sorry, like the greatest image associated with Damian Wayne in my mind is the one where he's like, well, this isn't what Grandpa Raish would have done, and Batman is like, shut up, and he's like, yes sir. Like Batman yelled at his kid and made him soil his shorts. You have Mark Waid, Howard Porter, who did the art in the Justice League or the JLA title with Morrison, and for more modern minded folks who know, Jeff Johns, who is he has reinvented so many characters in DC that I love as we get into our favorite creators here. Like he reinvented Green Lantern, Flash, Hawkman, the Teen Titans. He was the chief creative officer from 2010 to 2020 of DC before he abdicated or left that position earlier this year, and he's gone back to creating. I think he's actually working on a couple titles for Image Comics right now. And so I'm going to ask you, Mike, of what you've read outside of the New 52, whatever mentioned, like, and I did provide you with some stuff. What other Justice League comics, have you read that you've really enjoyed?
Honestly, I've only read a few issues here and there. It wasn't until doing research for the show, which I only read the New 52 stuff because it was the most accessible to me. Mm-hmm. In terms of, and here's the thing, when the New 52 started at the beginning of this decade, my God, that feels like 10 billion years ago.
Doesn't it?
I really, really wanted to get into DC. This was going to be my jumping in point. And I gotta say, I'm pleasantly surprised by reading these trades. They don't seem to be so inaccessible that if I wanted to keep reading the trades, I would be entertained. Because one thing that has always intimidated me about following comics that aren't licensed from a property is that you have to worry about crossovers. And I know DC is some of the worst for it. That I don't know what the hell's going on with reading the Justice League, at least again in these early New 52 comics. I'm like, okay, I know what's happening? I don't feel totally fucking lost here. And they give you enough background info that like, hey, this happened here. Here is a panel or two from this comic. Neat.
Yeah.
I liked what I've read, and I would be cautiously optimistic to read more, but I also don't know what the state of DC Comics is right now.
Well, that's something I think we can talk about in the new year, possibly with our first episode back once we get over winter break here. But yeah, what you read is like a drop in the bucket of what I would recommend. Like I've read, if I fall in love with a title or a character or a concept, there's at least a 50% chance I'm going to try and read as much as everything as there is. Certainly the New 52, I really enjoy that. It's not perfect, but one of my passions with my collecting, and since I started the show, is going back and working out reading orders, and I'm almost done with the reading order for the New 52 run. That includes crossovers and such.
So let me ask you this then, JT, as a complete ignorant question. Is the New 52 still going on right now, or is there a new continuity? If I wanted to jump on tomorrow, is it impossible to catch up, or is it expensive to catch up?
It's not impossible. It's a little convoluted, not much, and it might be a little expensive because, if you're going for trades and all that. But no, like the New 52 basically went from 2011 to about 2016.
Okay.
And after that, you had one of the events called Convergence, which would take way too long to explain, but basically resulted in the DC Rebirth, which is a rebranding initiative that DC editorial made, that they looked at what succeeded with New 52 and then it wiped away the stuff that didn't really work with fans and brought back a lot of elements that longtime fans love from like pre-52. So they essentially, like the end of the New 52, they killed New 52 Superman. Like his powers burnt out and he basically turned into a pillar of salt like Lot's wife. And at the same time, it was revealed that pre-52 Lois and Clark somehow survived into this new world, and they had a kid, Jonathan Kent, who has powers like his old man, and he became the new Superman. And there's this whole thing with their memories combining. It's a whole lot of timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly.
You should see my face right now.
Slacking jaw.
Yeah, I'm like, what?
But the New 52, like once I'm done with that list, man, I can definitely set you up with a reading list. And I enjoyed the New 52 Justice League. The current Justice League it's a lot of fun, but when they started the current run, it was setting up a lot of stuff for the current like death metal crossover that's going on in DC. Again, would take entirely too long to explain, so read the wiki, kids. But stuff that I would recommend that you and the listeners check out, Mike, the aforementioned, there's a 4-issue JLA Avengers crossover written by Kurt Busiek, who's one of my all-time favorite comic writers, drawn by George Perez, who is one of the GOATs of comic book art. Still hasn't eclipsed Jack Kirby, but he's up there. If you can get any of the various, if you can collect it in like soft cover trades and hardcover trades, the Silver Age Justice League JSA crossovers, like a certain point every year they would have an issue where Justice League would go over to Earth 2 and team up with the Justice Society, or a couple of the Justice Society people would come over to Earth 1 and help out. My favorite era of just in a pure comic sense is the Satellite era from like the late 60s into the 80s. Just pure comic book candy. As specific titles, I would recommend DC The New Frontier, which was a creation of Dave Stewart and the late great Darwin Cook. It's a love letter to early Silver Age DC comics. Grant Morrison's JLA run, including, and not necessary to enjoy, but including the DC 1 million crossover, which basically they looked at from Action Comics #1. They plotted out it's somewhere in the year 85,394 would be the 1 millionth issue of Action Comics. So they have this weird Grant Morrison-esque time travel where the Justice Legion from that era came back and sent the Justice League forward to, hey, we're going to celebrate your history, and shit went south in an incredibly fast. And some that I provided to you, the Justice League, the Silver Age trades, which are, at this point, they only have 4 volumes. It's a collection of the first, I want to say, couple of years worth of Justice League comics. And there are so many more that I'm going to rattle off way too many. It's almost another episode in and of itself.
And if people want to find these, you could find these on Comixology through other digital comic readers,
like
your
the
local
DC
brick and
app,
mortars,
all that sort of thing. I mean, a lot of these trades you can find at like Chapters or McNally Robinson, Kohl's bookstores like that. Even if you have, and I'm not defaming any comic book store, but if you have a decent comic book store in your town, folks, they should support them, yes, and they should have a decent trade section to just spend 20 minutes looking there. You might find something that you didn't know you wanted in your life. Now I'm going to ask you this, and then I'll answer, Mike. What is it about the Justice League that you enjoy?
I think I like the idea of people from different power sets and different backgrounds coming together, because I do not know word one about Wonder Woman. I don't know a lot about the Flash, but I like watching their interactions with the other characters. Like, I love how snippy Green Lantern was towards Batman. I love the Flash, even if he was a little bit more aggressive than what I remember him being. But then again, I've only seen the television show, really. And the artwork I saw, at least from the new 52 stuff that I read, I love the artwork. It was so bright, it was so colorful. I've always heard the Justice League defined to me as Bush League gods, whereas the Avengers are maybe a little bit more grounded. And I like that difference in power level. And it's just one of those things that I don't know a lot about, and I'm remarkably curious about. And I want to know more, and I am interested. So
yeah.
we'll probably revisit the Justice League at some point in the future here on the podcast.
Yeah. Now, what I like about the Justice League, something you just mentioned, it's not that they're Bush League gods. It's they're something that was solidified with the Grant Morrison run. Is he wrote, when he created his lineup and he brought the big 7 back, he wrote that in a way as to reflect, like, the Greco-Roman pantheon. Like, Superman is Zeus, Wonder Woman is Athena, Batman is Hades, Aquaman is Neptune, Flash is Mercury, Green Lantern is Hephaestus, and I forget which god Martian Manhunter is referred to as, but it's that idea that they are these mythic, you look at a lot of the lineups and it almost invariably, outside of the 80s stuff where they took a real kind of comedic view for a while, and with the UN stuff, they're always drawn as being like, the best of the best, these akin to gods. It's just this incredibly powerful lineup. But there have been like so many like B and C list characters that have, gone to shine depending on who's writing in the title. And I think ultimately that's what I love about Justice League, is like, as much as the Avengers, I think it's a little more prevalent with the Justice League that anybody can play. You even had guys like Steel, the Indestructible Man, and Vibe in the Detroit League of the 80s. Or you had, eventually Black Lightning, once he kind of got over himself and he became like this voice of conscience within the Justice League, and made sure they went after, they weren't just always fighting cosmic gods. They went after the little guy, and everyone contributes to the whole, but it's always like trying to be this beacon of hope in an otherwise drab world. Now, that's, our first ramblings on the Justice League, folks, as we kind of draw it to a close here and draw this dumpster fire of a year that has been 2020. I know Mike, I haven't said this before in recording, but I'm really happy that, you found your sister, you found your dad.
It's been a hell of a year when you really break it down.
Yeah.
I'm also
happy
done
you
some
found family, man.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. One of the things I haven't spoken a lot about on the show is I did a lot of government advocacy this past year, and it's been really successful. I was able to help thousands of fellow 60 Scoop survivors do some stuff. I've done some work with some government, not-for-profit agencies doing some advocacy for the government, and I'm still continuing to do that. I'm doing some more work with some of my local politicians. I'm volunteering my time. I'm going to be running for people living with a disability and people living with people that are First Nations as well. I'll be doing that in January, so look for that information on my social media. So it's been a wonderful experience this year. My year has been a year of growth and change, so I'm really glad that it turned out the way that it did.
Yeah. And coming on board TWIG here, like after being this like orbiting planet TWIG for years, and like, hey, can I play? Hey, can I play? Hey, can I play? And Mike's finally like, fine. Okay, it wasn't quite that bad, but I appreciate you taking a chance with me, Mike. I've loved getting back into, podcasting on a very consistent basis and just having fun conversations about comics all this year.
Mm-hmm.
I look for
it's been fun learning. You've been teaching me, and it's been interesting to be on the other side of the coin, on the other side of the desk, rather than being the educator. I'm being the educated.
Yeah. And that's definitely, like I've said, in our chats offline, I look forward to the future with this show. You mentioned in the last episode of Twig News, I pitched that Marvel movie podcast to you. Hopefully we can get that going next year. And just coming up, like really refining my craft in terms of researching and getting back into the groove of editing with the show. And I know when we come back in January, we can put out there, I think we will take a look back at our first year here at the Sunday Funnies, stuff that happened in comics, how comics were affected by the COVID. Like, of all the things that I thought were going to just hit the crapper, comics proved pretty resilient, all things considered.
Thank God for digital comics. That's all I gotta say.
Oh yes. And also, look ahead to stuff. There's stuff coming up in February, March next year with DC that I find very interesting, although whether or not it's going to last, probably not, but we'll see. So signing off for the year of our Lord 2020, I have been JT Saskatoon from Saskatoon, and
I've been Mike the Birdman, and next year we're going to have a very special guest join us all the way from JT's comic book shop, and I can't wait to tell you when he eventually shows up. So we'll post pictures on our social media. Let's just say my strategy of $10 didn't work, but he's coming home. If you know what I'm talking about, you've been listening to the show, and we appreciate it. So until next time, folks, please go visit your local comic book shops if it is safe to do so. Check out all your favorite publishers. Keep it locked to ThisWeekInGeek.net. We will see you in 2021. And until then, I'm out of here, pricks.
You're all too weak to see the truth.
Well, I believe in truth. But I'm also a big fan of justice.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.